You unfortunately know the old saying, all good things must come to an end. God, my life sucks. So, Season 21. It's a really interesting case to talk about. This season is a lot of things. A, it's the final season of the Brenner era. B, it's a very divisive season of the show. There are plenty of people who like this season, and there are an equal amount of people who hate this season. And C, it's very obvious to everyone that this season is rushed. I don't mean in terms of the animation or the music and things. I pretty much mean everything else. There are only 18 episodes this season instead of the usual 26. There's also one vocal song instead of the usual 2 or 3. And there are some cases where they accidentally kept the US voice lines for minor voice roles in the UK dub. I've noticed this mistake at least 3 times this season.
Sorry, boss.
What was that?
Well done, Philip. This little diesel saved my whole flock, all 68 of them.
There could be many reasons why Season 21 was rushed like this. It could be because this was the first proper season animated by this new animation company, Jam-Filled Entertainment, since Arc Productions sadly went bankrupt a few months prior. Or it could be that they were crunched for time after finishing Journey Beyond Sodor. Or it could be that they were saving much of their budget and production time as possible for the Big World Big Adventures movie and series. It could have been any one of these reasons, or all 3. So, 26 take away 18 means that there must have been 8 whole planned episodes that they had to cut to make way for the future rebrand. Some episodes we know were going to happen thanks to someone asking Ian McHugh about it via Gmail, which are the Christmas coffee pot at Over the Hill. Weird, but okay. Thomas's animal arc, Confusion Without Delay, Chucklesome Trucks, The Unfriendly Elephant with a different character, Oliver's Fear of Fireworks, which would have been Samson and the Fireworks, but with Oliver and Toad instead of Samson and Bradford, and one final episode that he probably forgot to clarify. Maybe an episode that explains why Rosie received her new red coat of paint, or maybe Free the Roads as a direct follow-up to Unscheduled Stops, or maybe another Terrence episode, or maybe a Henry episode where he properly leaves Tidmouth Sheds like Edward did. Who knows? So, to recap, we have the 2 Glynn episodes that had a rushed release for Season 20 just for a DVD release, which explains why Season 20 strangely has 28 episodes, and why Runaway Engine was made, because it would have served as a 3rd chapter in this Glynn arc, even if the episode is more about Millie and Steven. 2 episodes that were pushed to Season 22, one of them featuring different characters in a lead role. 1 episode pushed to Season 23, 1 pushed to Season 24, and Rebecca was originally going to be introduced in Season 21 before joining the Steam team in Season 22. These episodes would have worked so much better here. Why did they have to force all of this blubber stuff to the production crew? Why? But with what we did get with Season 21, most of it was a really good watch, honestly. I mean it. Most of the episodes are really funny, have interesting character pairings we've never seen before, and lots of interesting ideas. Pairing Daisy up with Harvey and them appreciating each other's unique abilities is an intriguing idea. Confused coaches has a fun concept. The Big Freeze was a nice opposite effect of Thomas Saves the Day from Season 8, where the Steamies rely on the Diesels to help with their jobs. And my favourite episode this season was Dowager Hat's Busy Day. It's basically the green controller from Season 9, was it? But 5 times better. It has an interesting concept, a nice stabbing of the Sharon Miller era, and it's honestly one of the funniest episodes in the series.
Now, who did I ask to pull the express?
The new and returning characters this season are just as interesting. It was really surprising for them to bring Terrence back in an episode instead of the usual cameo in the latest movie, and him realizing that the ability to go anywhere with his caterpillar tracks can lead him to danger if he's not careful. That is interesting. Although it does look weird seeing Terrence without that black triangle thing on his forehead. Carly is alright. She's a cute, chipper crane who's always willing to help Cranky in any way she can and is nice to talk to. But her design looks way too bright and modern to fit in alongside Cranky and Big Mickey, who I'll get into later, and placing her in between the two cranes looks like a step in the wrong direction. It looks way too crowded, cramped, and cluttered with Carly in the middle. Hannah is rather fun, the polar opposite of her established sister, Henrietta. Loud, boisterous, cocky, and wants to live life in the fast lane, instead of Toby's slow, calm, peaceful line. I was absolutely shocked when I first saw Bulgy at the end of Unscheduled Stops. He was one of the last characters I expected to return in the series, and I realized that there was a reason to bring him back. But reverting Bulgy back to his anti-rail attitude after he changed his ways in Season 7 was a bit on the forced side. I don't know, maybe he grew bored as a vegetable stand on wheels and longed to be moving more freely or something. And it was a really bold move to give Rosie a completely different look. Even though I think her original pink paint makes her stand out against all the other engines on the show, I actually quite like this new red paint, with the addition of a number and NWR on her tanks. I also like that she has grown more mature and responsible in the fastest red engine on Sodor, instead of following in someone else's footsteps like she was doing before. She's telling James to fix his brakes after she sees them failing, and she chases after James straight away to save him when he's out of control. It's safe to say that this little girl has now grown up. As I said before, there is only one vocal song this season, and it is... Wait, I know that tune.
Let's set friendship in motion. Let's set friendship in motion.
No, it can't be, can it?
Let's go, 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 and set friendship in motion. Go, go, go. Let's go, 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 and show what good friends we can be. Let's give it a try, come on.
Oh my god, they were really that lazy? Okay. Taking certain similarities aside, Set Friendship in Motion is quite catchy. It's very fast-paced, just like the rest of Season 21, but it has good lyrics, good vocals, and it's a bit interesting to hear Thomas himself singing certain parts. But even though there are some episodes and new elements I really liked this season, there are plenty of things that are holding it back a little. One of them being... bouncing, aka moments where the engines are seen moving their bodies when they didn't before. And And yes, I know this is technically gesturing and not bouncing, but that's what most people in the fandom have nicknamed this crap ever since 2017. So screw it. Even though it's inaccurate, I'm still calling it bouncing for the sake of simplicity. I was originally going to talk about this in the Season 22 video, but since they started implementing it here, I might as well talk about it here. The reason why the bouncing is such a huge problem is because it completely destroys any resemblance of realism the past few seasons were going for. They never bounced in the model seasons, they never bounced in the nitrogen era, and they certainly never bounced in the previous Brenner seasons. And every counter-argument that I have seen justifying the bouncing doesn't hold up for me. But there were occasions where the engines were shaking or wobbling, and you weren't complaining about it then. But the former was to portray fear, and it was mostly done during the model era, so it was to show how creative the modelers were, and the latter was to try and emulate weight and momentum. But there is absolutely no weight or momentum present in this bouncing animation. These guys should really be heavy bricks of metal, weighing tons, and yet this bouncing makes them look as if they are plastic shells with nothing but air inside them. Well, the show is animated in CGI, meaning they can do literally anything, so why shouldn't they make them bounce? Look, I get that the show is animated in the same way as most other cartoons these days, but that is not an excuse to step away from the realism from the source material they were clearly taking huge inspiration from. In fact, the CGI should have made this look better than the model series, because CGI could make the engines and locations look even more closer to real life than the models did, because of the low camera angles and accurate movements. The magic of the model series was that the sets looked so detailed and accurate to real life that it gave kids the illusion that Sodor was a real place you could actually visit, and the Brenner era was trying to recapture that same feeling when they kept improving the graphics in every new season. They wouldn't have made the visuals as detailed and high quality as they were if they weren't going for a realistic portrayal. Well, the Cars movies from Pixar have just as high quality animation, and those characters bounce. But the Cars movies aren't based on a book series that was being portrayed as realistically as possible, aren't they? But the bouncing was clearly added in to make the engines much more expressive. So are you seriously going to sit there, look me in the eye, and tell me that these engines weren't expressive already? Especially when they previously gave us episodes like Pouty James, which gave us this.
Woo boop. Ooh.
These engines were expressive enough without the bouncing. These guys have faces, for crying out loud. You don't need to be more expressive than that. Other problems I personally have is the fact that every single one of the Fat Controller's appearances uses him as comedic relief, even more so than in previous seasons. All of the episodes are much more fast-paced than Season 20 was, a bit too fast for my liking. Some fantasy sequences have no indication that it is a fantasy sequence, like in Cranky at the end of the line, and especially in Philip's number. There's no white border around the screen, there's no wavy ripple effect on the footage, or anything, so it makes you think that this crazy thing with the trucks is happening in the reality of the show. And there is the fact that all of the episodes are completely out of order. Like Springtime for Diesel, which features Diesel changing his ways at the end, is right before every single other episode where Diesel is a one-dimensional bully again. And the Carly episodes are shown before episodes where she is nowhere to be seen at the docks. And there are some episodes that are just really bad. Oh, and I don't mean that they could have needed improvement. No. I mean they are straight up bad. New crane on the dock. I actually thought Cranky at the End of the Line was a good episode, even though it's basically a more lively version of Kevin's cranky friend. I genuinely felt sorry and sympathetic for Cranky. I kinda had this feeling that he really was going to be replaced by a new crane back when I first watched this years ago. But even though it has a good moral about communicating and working together and all that jazz, what absolutely ruins this episode for me is the ending, where we get this retcon.
What?
And the fanbase goes wild. Like everyone else back in 2017, I was shocked at the fact that they gave Big Mickey a face, a name drop, and a voice at the very end. But when I look at this now, it gives me this impression. Big Mickey did abso-fucking-lutely nothing to help Cranky in Cranky at the End of the Line when he clearly needed it. He was standing there facing away from the camera the whole time just to set up the big reveal in the next episode. But there wasn't even a single acknowledgement that he was even there. There's no explanation that he might have broken down or something, and that's why he didn't help at all. And hell, I would have thought that repairing Big Mickey would have been a better priority than just adding another crane to the dock side. It may be a great 60 seconds of fan service, but it creates a massive plot hole. Emily in the middle. I'm sorry, but this episode is painful to watch because of what they did to Donald and Douglas. You remember the reason I didn't really like Love Me Tender was because the Scottish twins were bickering to each other? But at least that was for half of the episode, and they tried looking for each other and making up to each other in the other half of it. But here, their arguing has been cranked up to 11, and it happens for 90% of the whole damn episode. This is not Donald and Douglas to me. They are supposed to be loyal brothers that care about each other. That was how the situation from Breakfast, The Deputation, and, by extension, the Missing Coach episode arose. But outside of Season 2, they are hard-working, sensible engines like Edward and Duck, who scoff at the bigger engines' stupid beliefs and grins when they get their comeuppance. Not whiny, angry 5-year-olds who argue to each other over little things every 5 minutes. Wait, did the writers think that their argy-bargy they had in Twin Trouble was the only defining character trait they had? They only bickered once in the whole model era. I'm actually glad that they were never the main focus of another episode again, if this was all they could do with them. And the worst episode of this season, and maybe even the whole Brenner era, is, say it with me now, A Shed for Edward. You cannot look at this episode without thinking about what they did to Edward in the Blobber series. This is universally known, in basic terms, as the episode where they wrote Edward out of the STEAM team. I actually wouldn't mind this massive change to the show if it was written well, but they had to disregard their own continuity that they themselves came up with in order to make this episode happen. I mean, come on. Philip has never been seen working at Wellsworth at any point prior to this episode. He has clearly been working at Knapford the whole time. Why couldn't they have just created a Knapford shed set instead? And don't you think Rosie should have been a better engine to sleep at Wellsworth shed than Philip? Well, according to the unlucky Tug, she is. You have overhyped Rosie in all of this marketing. They should have made the most of her while they had the chance. Philip was honestly a guilty pleasure in the previous 2 seasons, but here he is now becoming more annoying. The montage of Edward finding new places to sleep is way too ridiculous, and then there's the ending, setting up the Rebecca episodes. The shitty Bwaba series. Edward's reasoning for leaving the sheds isn't really a bad one, logically. He is moving to some sheds that are nearer his branch line. But if I were Edward, I would rather stay with the engines that respect and appreciate each other than a fanboy wannabe who doesn't know when to shut up. And there is also the fact that everyone in Tidmouth is perfectly alright with saying goodbye to the wise, responsible old engine they all know and love, and are instantly talking about his replacement as soon as he's gone.
I wonder who will be joining us here at Tidmouth Sheds.
Hell, not even Gordon is upset in this ending. It'll be clearly shown early in the next season that he is not at all happy with Edward leaving, and other characters like Cranky are not against complaining about huge changes like this. But nope, he looks just as calm as the rest of the engines. Oh god, I had much more things to say about season 21 than I had originally envisioned. Even though most of this video has just been me ranting about it, I actually think this season is more hit than miss. It still has nice animation, a good focus on lovable characters, interesting new characters, shocking returning characters, decent background music, really funny humor in places, amusing lines of dialogue.
It wasn't fair to leave it for me.
And I think this is still a good watch overall. And that, very sadly, brings us to the end of the Brenner era. And overall, watching all of this in 2021 makes it all the more unbelievable that this era exists. After everything I have seen recently, I am shocked as hell that seasons this great, this well developed, this greatly detailed, this carefully woven, and this widely appealing had even been approved by the devils at Mattel. It truly was a second golden age. Even though it might not be as good as the classic series, there was so much love, detail, and passion put into these 5 seasons that it comes in at a very, very, very close second. It gave us a reason to watch the show again. After we thought the show was dead and was running out of ideas, this era brought everyone back and united more people together than ever before to celebrate and be proud to be fans of this show that we loved dearly ever since we were kids. Next time will be the beginning of the end. I'm scared.